world where achievements and accolades motivate us to do more and be more, we're often left wondering, is this really it?
Deep inside, you know there is more to life. You're ready to leave behind the old, push your way through, and claim the deeper life that's calling you.
That's where we excel.
We're your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Oslak.
And this is the Soulful Leader Podcast.
Sit back and relax as we share the shortcuts we've uncovered to help you make shift happen.
Welcome to the Soulful Leader Podcast. This is Stephanie. I'm here with Maren. And it's been quite a week for us, hasn't it, Maren?
Yes, it has.
A lot of changes, a lot of ups and downs and sideways and rights and lefts and ins and outs. And I kind of feel like a camel going through the eye of a needle. It's been a little bit of a rotor-rooting, and I'm not going to judge it. It is what it is, right? But I think we get really attached to telling a story about it, don't we? At least the itty bitty shitty committee definitely has a lot of versions of what it should or shouldn't be.
Yeah, I would agree. And I just have to let the audience know that when we got on the call today, normally we talk for a bit before we do our podcasts. And when we got on the call today, Stephanie said something to me that immediately started to get me to like tear up. And I was like, we're not going to be able to do a podcast today if I cry. She's like, this is the time though. This is when we're open and when we're vulnerable. And that's
it's real. It's juicy then.
Yeah, and we have the biggest impact because our hearts are open. And when our hearts are open, it's so much easier to connect to somebody else's heart. You know, if my heart is closed and your heart is closed, we're not having such a great, it's all surface level brain conversation, right? At least when one of our hearts is open, it knocks on the heart of the other person. And so just so that our audience knows, Stephanie and I have our hearts wide open today.
Yes, our hearts are very tender, very washed and cleansed today from those tears. And, we have, again, a story about our emotions, that we need to stuff them, that we can't be weak, because showing emotion, whether it's anger, whether it's fear, whether it's sadness, is a sign of weakness. And I'm here to tell you, it is so not a sign of weakness. Actually, what's a sign of weakness is when we make a story about it that limits us. Instead of literally opening up and sharing it with somebody who can hold the highest possibility for us. Hold that space of saying, you know what, I believe in you. I know that if it is this much of a dark night of a soul, you've got a brilliant sunshine waiting for you. And I'm with you. You're not alone. Doesn't mean I have to fix you. Doesn't mean I have to give you advice or anything like that. It's just, don't we just want a friend with us to know we're not alone? If we forget that, and we aren't alone.
We aren't. And I want you to go back and say what you were talking about with when you have that much shadow, there's that much light, more light. I want you to go deeper into that, because when you were talking to me about that earlier, it really struck a chord in me. It reminded me about a lot.
Well, even tell me more about the chord that it struck. What was it?
Well, tell the audience, tell our listeners about what you were sharing with me around that.
We think about leadership, we think about relationship, we think about going to work. We have an environment that we're in with others, whether it's our boss, whether we are the boss or a leader or a manager, or we're a leader in our home, in our family. Essentially, everything is a mirror of who I am. So if I make a story about something outside of myself, like I say, it's good, bad, right or wrong, or, male, female, which, by the way, we are both male and female within. I mean, we might have taken a female body, but there's masculine and feminine energies within me. So when we do that, we polarize. We actually separate ourselves from each other. And we have what's called a shadow. So you think about sunshine, if you're standing out in the sunshine and you look down on the ground, you will have a shadow. Well, the brighter the light, the darker the shadow is because it's underneath you. It's really dark and intense. The less light there is, the bigger it is, the easier it is to see it. But you can easily see it and you can find it. So why is this important? It's important because when I'm in the presence of someone who might be holding a lot of light for me, they're loving, they're kind, they're upbeat, I have to remember that they too also have a shadow. They're not just all light. They do have a shadow. And as I'm attracted to the light, just kind of like a mosquito to a light, or a moth,
zapper.
right? A bug zapper. It's like you burn in someone else's light, and that's not a bad thing. It's like we stopped after making a story about whether it's good or bad or right or wrong, but it's like you get illuminated. You are in the fire, and what's burning in you is actually all the things that are false. So we might say, well, is this shadow the same as a false self? Well, yeah, sometimes, but really a shadow more specifically is all of that which you have not brought up to the light or you have made wrong about yourself. You said, I'm not good enough, or, no one loves me, or I'll never be able to do that. Like all the itty bitty shitty committee basically is your shadow. And the louder and the more intense your itty bitty shitty committee, by the way, the more intense it is, the louder it is, the more light you have behind it. Now, let me say that again. The more darkness, the more itty bitty shitty committee, all the thoughts that tell you you're not good enough, you're not loving enough, you're not whatever enough, means that there's actually light. There's gold in that mine. And I say that also with physical pain. It can be physical pain, it can be mental pain, it can be emotional pain, spiritual pain. Any kind of pain is actually the illumination of the marker of where the shadow is. Now, most of us will want to burn, cut, or poison that shadow. We're going to blow it up. We're going to fight it and tell it to get out of town. We're going to, kick it to the curb, or we're going to poison it with our own thoughts about ourselves because it's going to have even more thoughts. And how much does that really work for you? Doesn't really work. All it does is it feeds it. There's a story when we talk about the story about the light wolf and the dark wolf. Now, I'm talking about a shadow wolf, and I'm talking about a divine wolf. And, this is a story of a grandfather and a grandson. I think it's a First Nation or Native American story, where the grandson comes to the great elder and he says, which one is going to live? Grandpa, is it going to be the light wolf or the shadow wolf? And his grandfather says to him, he says, well, son, it depends on which one you feed. So we can take another level of that because I can say, well, I can just ignore my shadow. I'm just going to stuff it into my body. I'm going to distract myself. I'm going to talk a lot. I'm going to watch movies. I'm going to eat. I'm going to do all this other stuff to avoid it. Have sex, whatever.
Whatever your addiction is.
Whatever your addiction is. Whatever your escape mode is. Watch TV, look at Facebook. Gossip. Great. Those are very common, right? All those. Instead, what if this is your opportunity for you to actually meet the shadow? Because the shadow has a gift. Behind its darkness, its irritation, there is gold behind there. What would you need to be able to face your shadow? And think of a mythical being, right? I always think of fairy tales because in every fairy tale, there is a villain who's usually been very sadly wounded, right, at some point in their life, and wasn't always a villain, but became a villain because they got their heart broken and no one was there to help them get a higher story of it.
So they're living in their shadow.
They live in their shadow and they play out the shadow. And so what happens when someone doesn't have an issue that gets resolved, whatever that is, in work, or they don't feel recognized, you don't feel valued, you don't feel appreciated, you feel neglected and abandoned from your parents, whatever it is, right? All kinds of stuff. We can find all kinds of shadows. Instead of ignoring it and pushing it aside, stuffing it, and saying, I do not want to feel that. It's so uncomfortable. Please make it go away. Let me take a drug for that, which is sometimes you have to do that. But here's another option too. Meet it with love. with kindness. Kindness, that's the key.
I think the thing for me when you asked me, like what chord did it strike in me? And thank you for explaining all of that with the shadow. And when you said I had been in my itty bitty shitty committee for hours today, recognizing that I was there and not able to get myself out. And I think that a lot of our audience can understand that, where, I'm beating myself up over this thing. And then I'm like, well, I can see that. And all of a sudden, so now my inner, my inner judgment committee says, well, okay, so you've gotten over that one. How about this one? And they throw a different one at my face, right? Well, you suck at this too. And then you suck at that too. And you said
It's like a weed, you pull one and all of a sudden there's a whole bunch of them that come with it.
Well, and you pull one and then you realize that there's 17 other around the garden. You're like, shoot, oh my God, really? I thought I got them. They just
and
keep
guess
popping
what?
up.
Exactly. Those weeds are going to keep on popping up as long as you're conscious.
Yeah.
And so it's not because you've done something bad or wrong, Mirren.
No.
It's because you've got the light to see where the weeds are.
And that's the thing that I got, like when you were saying it, I got another layer of that is because I have the light. And that's what I wanted the listeners to get. It's like that itty bitty shitty committee, the shadow. It's there because you have such strong light. And that's the chord that it struck in me of like, oh, I hear you. And then like, I hear you of Stephanie, I hear you. And then the other part of that was, I see you, meaning Marin, I see you.
Yeah.
I got to see that all of this is just a play, an act that's going on. And meanwhile, there's this bright light shining off the stage, and that's the real Marin. And it's like, oh, look at that bright light shining. And this is just a bunch of actors that were hired to make sure that like they get to follow me around, right? Follow her around and make sure that she's like, she keeps getting the gifts. And our shadow, one of the truths that our spiritual teachers have shared with us is that the shadow doesn't go away. It's not something we're trying to fix.
Yeah.
It's something that we keep meeting so that we get to mine the next layer of gifts and the next layer of gold, as Stephanie said.
That's right. And the only way we're going to see our shadow is to be out in the world with each other. I mean, trust me, you can turn on the TV and you can have shadow. There you go. There it is. So it's like a friend of mine used to say, if you spot it, you got it. And which means you have the light to actually transform it. I want you to remember that. If you see something that is separating us, each other, hurting, harmful, difficult, challenging, as well, there's a golden shadow too. When you see something in someone and you go, oh my God, you are so amazing. Like you came on and said that to me. And you're like, Steph, I had a shitty day. Oh my God. But then I think of you and you've had a shitty week. And here you are. And I'm like, oh, she's so great. And she's all that and a bag of chips. And it's like, yeah, but if you see it in me, it's because you got it. You wouldn't even recognize my light unless you could see your own. You forgot it. And
that's such a great thing to say.
I
like not to me,
yeah.
like to the world, of like recognizing that when we see something in somebody else, it's because we already have it in us.
And we haven't owned it yet. Now, I'm going to preface that because sometimes people will take that into the ego, which by the way, I like defining ego, just like how I have my acronyms for fear. How do you say acronym? Acronym. I can't say it. I have clients who are like a speech path. I can't even speak today. I'm so sorry. But like
acronym.
Okay, thank you. Ego, edging God out. Now, God meaning love, peace, joy, all the good juicy stuff, right? So whatever you are edging out is the light. You're edging out the light. And so let me just tell you about the ego. It's like someone gives you a compliment. Oh, I really love your hair today, Marin. And Marin would say, I know, it's really great, isn't it? That would be an ego. And I know where it's in it. So sometimes it
So
can be a
hold on
shadowy
though,
ego. Yeah.
because the other thing that's an ego is when I go, oh no, I just like I didn't even wash it and I didn't like, and I try and push that compliment right back at you.
There you go.
That's also
There,
ego.
that's also ego. So now you have a golden and a shadow of the ego. So is the ego the same as a shadow? Yes and no. It's both. It's a both and, which is a paradox, isn't it? So
Mm-hmm.
it's like we need an ego in order to walk us across the street in New York City. Otherwise, we'll get killed. It's like, oh, yes, I'm an infinite light being. I can just walk across the street in the middle of, whatever. No, you can't. You need your ego to keep you safe. But the thing is that ego ends up becoming so strong that it becomes over identified and it ends up driving your bus with all the parts of yourself on there off a cliff half the time instead of instead of really looking at like as from an observer. If you could, and we're going to give a little example of this with the butterfly. Like if you could observe yourself as you're evolving, because we cannot go back to who we used to be. Sorry, can't go back. Can't go back to my teenage years. Don't want to.
Don't want to.
But I've heard myself say that. It's like, oh, if I only knew what I had, back in my teenage, I would use it different. I'm like, well, would I have? Not really, unless I was able to be present, and we call this presencing, present to an absolute ideal future, which I do a lot. And we're going to do this as an exercise. So stay tuned. So what I mean by that is that when we get caught in the itty bitty shitty committee, I would say, for one, you're caught in your shadow and you're caught in your ego. I heard a really interesting, I don't know, I don't want to really say it was a joke, but it was like someone said, they had this conversation with their psychologist, and the psychologist asked, "Do- I know you're suffering with mental illness. Do a lot of people suffer in your family with mental illness?" And the person responded, "No, I'm the only one suffering. The rest of my family love it." Funny, not funny.
Funny, not funny.
Funny, not funny, right? And so that ideal of like sometimes we get addicted to our pain, our suffering, because it gives us an out not to shine our light, not to step up and grow up and evolve. We want to then put our stuff, our light and our shadow, on our loved ones, our people at work, our employers, our governments, our school system. We just put it out on somebody else because I'm like, if I put it out on them, I don't have to deal with my stuff. I don't have to be responsible, and I don't have to do my work.
And one of the ways that you know that you're doing it is when you're complaining about the people around you. Oh, my boss never sees my value and da da da. Oh, my husband does this. Oh, my wife does that. It's like, and we all do it. And it's not, again, it's not a shame. It's not a good, bad, right, wrong. It's an opportunity. It's a doorway. And
So people would call that the dark night of the soul. Like when you say, I'm unhappy. So let's talk about depression. Deep pressed ions. There's light in those cells. Go get them. They're pressed. They're squashed. So guess who can undo them? Guess who can lighten them up? You. You've got this. Now, can you do it on your own?
Right.
Probably not. You're going to need people. You're going to need skilled people, whether that's a psychologist or a counselor or and sometimes we need medication to be able to create a safe space for us to look at ourselves with kindness.
The other thing I want to say about that is you mentioned skilled people, which brings up for me the skill itself. Oftentimes we think that this is just something we're supposed to know how to do. It's like, well, it's part of being human. I should know how to do this. We're not taught it. And it does take attention and intention to build any skill. If you were going to go learn how to ice skate, you wouldn't just like put on a pair of ice skates and well, some people do.
Some people do.
Expect yourself to be able to do it, right? Or get on a horse and just expect yourself to be able to ride. It's like there's a learning curve. And even after the learning curve and you've learned it, there's practicing the skill and getting better at it. And so when we start to be accountable and turn to that complaining and go, aha, I see you for what you are. You're showing me the dark night of the soul or this doorway. And I don't know what the frick to do with you, but I see you. That's where you start, right? And that's a skill in and of itself to recognize it.
And when you're in a relationship, whether, like I said, whether it's at work or with your partner or, with your family in some way, a parent, child, you get hooked if you're not doing your work. So, I mean, I can use that total example for myself. It's like, I have a loved one right now who's going through a dark night of the soul. And I'm going to own my own stuff. I stopped doing my practice, and I'm going to preface this. I stopped doing my practice from a place of love, and I get to do my practice. I did it from a place of, oh, I really should do my practice. Guilt, shame. I got to sit down. I got to do it. I only have 10 minutes. I'm like, that, and there's no shame. I believe I heard this from one of my teachers said, sometimes not doing the practice is actually your practice, because then you'll realize the value and the benefit of when you do it and what it gives you. And I'm like, so, this loved one's going through the dark night of the soul. I'm like, I lost it. I lost it because all of a sudden I felt thwarted into my dark night of the soul. It's like, how could he do this or that, this happened, these different things. And I'm like, holy shit. I love this person so much. I just jumped in there with you. I'm like, there's a saying that, I love you so much. I'm willing to go through hell with you. And that's really what it is, so there's no shame on it. But I recognized it. I caught it. Why? Because I have 20 plus years of doing practice. I caught it. And I don't think most people do.
No. And the thing about when both of you are in there, there's no one there to shine the light. So because you are skilled at this, you were able to do it from within the relationship. Most people are going to need to go and see somebody or talk to somebody, because when both of you are in it.
But preface again, I have a counselor that I see every single week, individual.
So important.
Every single week I see this counselor. Every single week I have for years. And I've always had, I shouldn't say always, it's kind of like a thing, but I would say for the last 20 plus years, I have had a spiritual teacher. Now, I know some of you might say, well, I don't know, where do I find a spiritual teacher? Good heavens. I mean, there are so many resources. I mean, the 12-step programs in AA or Al-Anon or ACOA, all of them have the whole consistency of like finding a fellow traveler or a sponsor. It's like, and it's free. It's like what gets in the way of us doing the work is our own lower self, our own ego. It's actually ego. And that ego will then get identified with the shadow, and it literally buries us alive. If you feel confused, if you feel heavy, and I don't just mean heavy in the way of burden, heavy breathing, as well as even heavy weight, all of those things, it's like warning, you're in the shadow. And celebration, there's light coming for you. Like, go get it. This is your time. It's time. Things don't arrive until you're ready to unwrap the gift. So
yeah, it's not just haphazard. There's a reason that it's showing up. Absolutely.
There's an absolute reason.
So earlier before the podcast, when we were talking and I had mentioned that I was kind of in my crap and I hadn't been able to get out of it, I recognized that I was in my crap. And also I have a bunch of tools and I still wasn't able to get out of it. And you were telling me about an exercise that you had done with one of your clients. And it really, I think that it could be very helpful to some of our listeners as far as a way to shift that. When you recognize like, okay, I'm in my crap. What the heck do I do with it? This might be a nice visualization for them.
Yeah. So for those of you who are driving and or operating a fitness equipment or any kind of heavy equipment, put this on pause. And when you get home, take a moment to just slow down, relax, put your feet up, get in a very comfortable position, have your spine straight. I always like doing that because, I had a client the other day that said, I fell asleep while you were doing the meditation. And I felt like I missed everything. I'm like, just remember, your deep self still gets this. If you fall asleep, it's okay. In fact, that's great. It's great. Have a good
Yeah.
nap. It's
Your
okay.
trend,
You're
your
transrational.
transrational self gets it.
Yeah. The unconscious part of yourself is always awake and is always guiding and helping you. So it's good.
Mhm.
So to set you up with this, we've talked about this, I think, in one of our podcasts, about the caterpillar and the butterfly. And it's such a metaphor for metamorphosis. That transcendence of who you think you are, our identity. By the way, when we have a hard time, whether we're retiring or letting go of a relationship and we're moving into from being a family to, or letting go of kids, leaving the house, there's these transitions. We are losing an identity. And the first thing we want to do when we lose an identity is what?
Find it.
Yeah, please, please, please don't leave me. We want to grab onto it. We want to but I don't want to get old. So this is how the caterpillar feels. Think about that. Here's this life on flatland earth, and it's just busy, busy eating like no tomorrow. It's just consuming everything it can. And that's what we do.
Right. This is us. We go to work in the morning, we come home in the evening, we consume, we watch some TV, et cetera, et cetera. And it's very flatland. And we're like, oh, okay, this is life. This is
And
what
then
we thought life is.
exactly. And then life happens because you're ready to wake up. Shit happens, I call it. It happens. It's supposed to. The best thing for shit is on a garden to plant. It's great manure, great fertilizer. So we don't know what our garden is meant to be. And we might not have created the space or the time to reflect of like those questions that Daniel and Jill left us back in the earlier podcast of who am I? Why am I here? What am I here to do? And who am I here to become? And why now? So when shit happens, it's now. It's time. So, the caterpillar doesn't instantaneously become a butterfly. It has to sit still in the compost of the shit for a while. And it goes through the itty bitty shitty committee. Like, who am I? Why am I here? What's this happening to me? I don't like this. This is uncomfortable. I want to go back to my caterpillar. Am I dying? I don't understand. Why?
Me, not me. So there's a fight that happens between me, not me. And this happens to us all the time. And in the caterpillar's instance, we call it caterpillar soup. And it literally tries to kill off what it thinks is not it, which is it's evolution, right? So here comes what are called imaginal cells. And the imaginal cells are imagining the butterfly. Literally, they've studied this in science. There are imaginal cells that show up that imagine the butterfly, and the caterpillar tries to kill it.
Because it doesn't know it. It doesn't understand it. And
That's
so
not
let's
me.
let's put this in our everyday life as leaders. So we have a pandemic. We don't like having to stay home and not connecting with our friends and family and loved ones and going to our colleagues and work. And then all of a sudden we go, this home stuff's kind of nice. I kind of like it. Oh, now I have to go back to work. And we're feeling a little bit like maybe a little shell shocked. Maybe some of us who are extroverts are going, thank goodness. But things are different. It's not the same. People don't look at you in the eye anymore. They give you more space and you're wanting to come close, or you feel anxiety and you want to push people away. Like there's all of this stuff that came up. Me, not me, kill it. I don't understand. It's not the same as it was. No, it's not. And
Right. I
neither
want to
are
go
you.
back to, right. I want to go back to what I know.
Mm-hmm. And so now what? Now you're realizing, do I really want to be in this life this way with this relationship or this job or this town, this whatever, this city? I don't know. Who am I? And this is caterpillar soup. It's great. because we don't know what's coming. Like, again, one of our other podcasts of like, what if this was happening for all of us, for you, for me, for all of us, and not happening to us? We're no longer victims. See, the caterpillar thinks it's a victim because it hasn't surrendered and to allowed. We talked about that in one of our podcasts about the wing of the bird. And if we only strengthen one wing, the doer, striver, be there, out the outer world of I am this and I am worthy because of who I am and what I do, not by who I want to become
Or
or
just
what I am
because
in
I
my inner
am.
world. And just because I am. So, this is all of this stuff that's coming up. And we need tools and skills to be able to digest it and flow through it without struggling and wearing ourselves out or hurting others. Because here's the other part of it is that you're not just your present self. For most of us, we're not present. There is no, we're in the future or we're in the past. And I say, how do you know? How do you know if I'm in the future or how do I know if I'm in the past? If you're in the past, you're going to be that little child who is afraid. Like imagine taking your 3-year-old, having that 3-year-old drive the car, go to work, pay bills, come home, make supper, and run a family or a household. Not so happy, not not happy, don't like it. So if we are in our childlike moment part of ourselves, which we all are at times, that's very normal. That part of us might be really sad or afraid, isolating. Anxiety. Anxiety comes from our past, from our limited self. And we are not stepping into our gifts and strengths and in our empowerment, our potential. Now, here's another one. Think about a teenager in your life. If you thought about a teenager, healthy 14-year-old, what are the qualities of a teenager?
Rebellion.
Yeah, I don't want to. You can't make me. Screw you. Pound sand. I'm out of here. I don't need to put up with this crap.
Right.
I'm done.
They're trying to, they have to disassociate from who you told them to be so that they can decide who that they are for themselves.
That's right. They're fighters. They've fighters. So here's the thing though. They also, just like the child, both of these archetypes have light and shadow. So we just talked about the shadow. So if you are feeling anxious, that's the shadow of the child. If you're feeling rebellious, like screw you kind of energy, resignation. We're seeing a lot of the quiet resignation now of like, I'm out of here. I'm out of this marriage. I'm out of this job. I'm out of this town. I'm leaving. That's a teenager. That's a teenager. And there's nothing wrong about it. But just to recognize it and going, okay, so that's the shadow side. What are the light sides? So when you encounter like a little child, and they're totally lit up, what are the qualities of like a newborn baby? They remember who they are and why they're here, by the way. Every single one of us knew who we were and why we're here. And then we got programmed by culture, by our family, by our experiences. We got shut down or broken down. So the light part of that child
designed. That
perfect.
Was by
it's
design.
Perfect.
Yes.
It is by design. Exactly. It's perfect because it's the game of the fairy tale life of like, the orphan basically gets lost in the wilderness and has to find their way home. That's the evolution. So the divine child is creative and playful and imaginative and resourceful and happy. This is the divine child. Remembers who you are while you're here. Curious. Those are great qualities. We don't want to have this child be always anxious and sad. Behind that is some great gold, isn't there? And then if we take the teenager, for instance, I don't want to, you can't make me, screw you kind of energy, and I'm out of here. Why bother? I can't make a change anyway. I can't make a change in the system, whether it's the school or whether it's the government or whether it's the medical system. I can't change. I can't change in this job or this marriage. I'm out of here. See you later. I tell you, I got to fight with that one every day with in myself. I got a feisty teenager in me. And I gotta, you know, and so what's good about it? So let's look at what's good about it. What's the light of a teenager? Think about a really great teenager that you know right now. They have so much willpower. They're so stubborn. And you know, you need stubborn in order to be able to become realized in this life. That's the stick to itness. You know, most teenagers, they will fight you tooth and nail until they get their way. It's great quality. Like, that's great.
It
So
is.
use it towards the light, right? So that stubbornness, that quest for adventure. You know, they think they can live forever. Nothing can touch them. They're invincible. You know, they've got resourcefulness in that way. They usually are always that sense of belonging, and they're trying out new things, you know?
Yeah, exploration.
Exploration. It's a great time. So if we can unpack that, and again, not making one right or wrong, good or bad, but saying, which one am I in right now? And which one do I need? What are the qualities I need to bring forth into this chrysalis of time that's going to help me become the butterfly, and not trying to figure it out? See, we get to the figuring out. See, this is the other thing. I mean, as children, we're such in the moment. We're so present. We're not figuring out anything. We're so in the moment. We're putting things in our mouth. We're checking it like, look at that. That's amazing. Oh my gosh, the wonder. Like, we're not figuring it out. We're curious. We're like, wow, what does that taste like? What does that look like? And what if this happened? And, you know, what if the trees were purple? Like, it's just, man, it's just awesome. I love it.
It's a magical world for
Yeah.
children.
And that's why as we get older, we like hanging out with little babies and children, because they help to remember who we really are and what we've lost in our,
and the magic of the world.
And the magic of the world, of the things that didn't work out your way. So yeah. So those are I say those are the kind of the archetypes in the way of our inner parenting. And so what is required from us? Well, what's required from us is that adult, not the critical parent that says, go to your room, don't talk to me till you're done. Eat that food, don't leave that table until you're complete. You know, it's not the critical parent. If you could be the most loving, kind, if you could imagine what the most loving, kind parent, and maybe some of you have had that, that's great, but most of us haven't. And because we haven't learned how to embody, we haven't had the skill for mastery for that. So this is, where do we get it? We need to get it inside. That's where our creativity and our imagination comes. So if you could imagine this incredibly loving, patient parent that could look at you and go, oh, I know you're having a hard time, honey. I'm right here. I'm not leaving you. I'm right here. I know. You're pissed off or you're scared. I'm right here. Tell me all about it. And this is where the emotions can come out, because it's safe. And then that parent isn't going to fix it for you. It's just going to witness it and remind you that you're not alone, that you're not lonely, you're not disconnected, that there is truth and purpose to your life.
And really, I think that's so, going back to the butterfly and the caterpillar being in caterpillar soup, the imaginal cells at some point start to win over, and they take over the process. And that's that loving parent. That's that what we can imagine for who we could be, and then having somebody that can hold that. And it's the person we imagine for ourselves, or it's a counselor, or it's a friend, or it's whatever. The imaginal cells, however, they are inside of you. And that butterfly is not a separate entity. You already are that butterfly. And so simply, and I say this kind of laughingly, because all you have to do, all you have to do is want it. No, all you have to do is step into those imaginal cells. And the reason I laugh is because when you're in the itty bitty shitty committee, when you're in the caterpillar soup, you have no idea how to step into those imaginal cells. You're busy fighting it. You think, me, not me. That's not me. Kill it. And yet it's your future self, loving, beautiful, soaring butterfly self that's calling you forward.
So you're either going to fight it, or you're going to run away, in your life, like try to run away. And like I said, that's where we run away in addictions or isolation. Or we're going to freeze, like deer stuck in a headlight, frozen, don't know what to do, don't know, go left, right, up, down. I don't know if I should hide or fight. I'm frozen. And that's, by the way, where a lot of people have like frozen shoulder. A lot of it's fear. There's so much fear, it completely immobilizes you. And that's a great sign. Again, and I always say that those are X marks the spot where the treasure is. So it's not about shaming yourself. In fact, I'd celebrate yourself and say, great, I have this thing, whatever the pain is in your life. And you go, fantastic, I just found where the treasure is.
Yeah.
Now you need help to be able to guide into it. Because nobody, and hear me on this one too, nobody should tell you what it is.
No.
If you can find it for yourself, you'll own it. And you already have the answer in you. It's in you. So I'll give you an example. I have a wonderful client who is coming in, and absolutely, I mean, it's a shit show. Everything, like every week there's one more thing on top of the level of stress that she has. Like, it's a shit show. It really is. God love her. I'm like, oh my God, what happened this week? And she's like, oh, you're not gonna believe it. I'm like, well, I might. I might just want. I'm like, wow. And she'll say, oh, I don't think I can handle that much. I said, you realize you said that last week. I said, you might want to stop saying that, because we get what we can learn to handle. So obviously your soul is one hell of a fighter, like to be able to take on this much. And I said, how about you hit rock bottom right now? How about, what if this was enough? And you could say, okay, well, it is. And I have to figure it out. She said, I got to figure it. I'm like, that's often the obstacle, because the caterpillar cannot figure out how to become a butterfly. It just knows it. And how it figures it out is letting go of the figuring out.
Yeah, because it's never been a butterfly. How will it know it can't figure that out? I
It's
can't
never
figure out
been
how to
there.
be something I've never been. I have to presence it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we have to presence the future. We can't figure it out. Haven't been there yet. Don't know what it looks like. So the part that might say, I'm going to fight this, that would be your teenager. Evoke the part of the teenager that has that curiosity and adventure. Like, wow, this is so great. I get to do this. I get to do this. It's happening for me. I'm invincible. Bring the teenager along. The child that might be scared to death and crying and isolating, then you bring that child along, and you inner parent that child, and you say, I need your curiosity.
And your
I'm right here, and your
creativity.
creativity and your resourcefulness and your playfulness, your ability to laugh.
And resilience.
Mm-hmm. And so you say to both your teenager and your inner child, I'm right here with you. That's the butterfly. The butterfly is your loving parent that says, I'm right here with you. In fact, my client who I said, imagine the butterfly is on the other side. Because she was saying, I can't leave my job. I will never make as much money as I'm making in this job. I'm like, do you know that for sure? Are you absolutely positively sure you know that? I said,
Well,
I
she
think that's
does know that because she's claiming it.
that's right. I said, that's the caterpillar's version of the consumption on the earth. I said, what? I said, just for a moment, I said, what would the butterfly who lives in a totally different reality, a completely multiverse, totally multiverse. I said, what would the butterfly say to the caterpillar? If the caterpillar just wanted to say a caterpillar, and it can't, because evolution is going to happen and it's going to get turned into it. What would the butterfly say to the caterpillar? I'm like, oh, you're not going to believe what's coming. You don't want to miss this. That's what her inner voice said. And I said, if we can make space, how do we make space? We need to acknowledge the pain, feel it, and know it's not you. It's the X marks the spot where the treasure is. So this is the practice I gave her. Are you ready? So again, if you're driving, this is where you want to put pause and come back to it later. For those who are ready, take a deep breath in. Long exhale out. And if you're visual, you might want to imagine that you are in a beautiful place in nature. And right now, you are the caterpillar. So, out of the caterpillar's eyes, what does it look like to be on the earth? And with all your legs that are connected to the earth, the leaves, the grass, the trees, what does it feel like? And what sounds do you hear close to the earth? What does it sound like? Oh, and breathe in how good it feels to be a caterpillar. Oh, you're soft and fuzzy and you get to eat all kinds of really good stuff. And then one day, you've eaten so much. You've taken in so much information, life, stuff that you're full. You're bursting at the seams. So just feel that pressure inside yourself. Depression, pressure. It's stuffed. You're full. You're ready. And we're going to focus on your exhale here. So as you inhale, just taking in a natural inhale. And as you exhale, you might even want to go, just letting go of all of the stuff and the stuffing. And just letting go. It's safe to release this. You're ready. And you find a nice place to curl up and let go. And you begin to isolate. You go away from your fellow caterpillars and you know it's time. You know it's time to go inward. And as you start to go inward, you hear all the itty bitty shitty committee. All those things that the fears, the doubts, I'm not good enough. They won't love me. What if I am abandoned? What if I do really well and I'm expected to do more? All of these things. I don't want to. You can't make me. Do I have to? It hurts. Exhale out. Let it all out. Just focusing on the exhale. And now, as you tune in, there's something outside of your chrysalis. You can almost sense it, really. Something's calling you. You feel it. There's a pull. And it feels scary at first because you've never felt this pull before. And you really identify with the old way you liked being a caterpillar. It was really great. What if this is not so great? But you keep feeling the pull, and there's something that really is curious about it. And you remember the adventurous teenager that you once were, and the curious, playful child that you are. And they start to listen. They start to sense and feel this other part of you. And for a moment, just imagine that there's another part of you that's observing outside of the chrysalis. And you notice that there's this beautiful butterfly. What color is it? Notice how its wings are moving. You might even feel the gentle breeze that their wings make and the sound. And if you listen really closely, this is a friend who's been where you've been, who knows exactly what you're going through. And what does that butterfly say to you or show you? now breathe in, focusing on the inhale, letting the exhale happen naturally. You start to breathe in the call of your future. And it starts to pull you with strength. All the things that are there for you that you have not yet experienced. Can you be present that the life that is calling you is better than the one you've left behind? Breathe it in. Trust it. And then when you're ready, and you can physically do this if you'd like, I want you to stretch your arms out to the side and imagine that you are inside the chrysalis right now. And feel the restrictions that are there for you. And they're not restrictions that are punishing you. They're restrictions that are strengthening you, because as you push against them, the muscles are getting stronger and the wings are getting more and more developed. Sense it, feel it, see yourself weakening that chrysalis. Hear the butterfly on the other side cheering you on. You got this. You can do this. I'm here. It's going to be amazing. Trust me. I've been where you've been. I'm here for you. You're not alone. And then when you're ready, give a really good stretch with those arms straight out and allow that light to now pour in to where there was darkness. And feel what it's like to stretch your wings and have liftoff. Breathing in, breathing out. Taking in the future, letting go of what was the past. It's safe to trust the unknown. I let go. I allow. And then just slowly, when you're ready, open your eyes, wiggle your fingers, your antennas, your wings, when it feels tight, when it feels limited, and you get the itty bitty shitty. Presence, the butterfly. There's a part of you that knows how to do this.
That was beautiful. Absolutely love that. So that will be available. We will do a separate link in our show notes for just that section if you're interested in revisiting that section without listening to the entire podcast. Although you're always welcome to listen to the podcasts again. And please, we would love to get your feedback. Come and share with us either in our Facebook group or in our LinkedIn group and let us know a little bit about your caterpillar and your butterfly. We'd love to hear from you. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. I know that I did, and we'll meet you with our hearts open. We'll see you next week.
And that wraps up another episode of the Soulful Leader podcast with your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Oslak. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to dive deeper, head over to our website at thesoulfulleaderpodcast.com.
Until next time.